Greetings, everyone. I'm YG Nightstorm, a new affiliation with Church Militant. And guess what? Today, I am 50 years old. Now, I'm excited about that, but this day almost didn't happen. And honestly, 30 days ago, I had 2 heart attacks. Literally died for 15 seconds. And let me tell you, dying will give you a fresh perspective. It helps you really appreciate the people who are there for you in your life when things are good, and also for the folks who stick with you during our more difficult times. And that's why I'm excited about this upcoming retreat. The theme of this retreat is the Holy Spirit, forgotten and misunderstood. Now, this is what we're talking about. The retreat is Sunday, February 4th through February 11th, departing from Galveston, Texas. Everything big in Texas. 2 outstanding presenters, Bradley Eli and Jules Gomes. Both veteran Church Militant staffers, both with multiple advanced degrees in theology, so that means they're pretty smart. Now, each day, there would be morning prayer, rosary, and the Holy Mass. Priests will be available for the sacrament and reconciliation and individual spiritual direction. That's some good stuff. So why not join us on this journey through the Western Caribbean? And I want to say lastly, God bless you and everyone you hold dear. I look forward to seeing you on the sea. Let's go, Church Militant, and let's go get them in 2024. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
Pope Francis has failed to excommunicate hundreds of Syro-Malabar priests who defied his Christmas Day ultimatum. But an Italian priest who trashed the Pope on New Year's Eve, well, he was excommunicated the very next day. Join us with the latest from the Eternal City, Church Militant's Rome correspondent, Dr. Jules Gomes. Jules, Pope Francis gave a final ultimatum, meaning a second ultimatum, to more than 400 Syro-Malabar priests who were refusing to accept Rome's compromised uniform liturgy. That came out. They're supposed to have that by Christmas Day, have that all together. Now, how many complied, and what's the status of those who didn't comply to that ultimatum?
Brad, the Francis papacy is facing yet another major and catastrophic fiasco in India, in the Syro-Malabar Church. As you rightly said, this was the second time he issued an ultimatum to the priests who want to retain the liturgy they've been following for the last 50 or 60 years, that is facing the people throughout the Holy Kurbana. And they have said categorically, they've said no again and again to Rome's so-called compromise formula. And Francis told them, sent them a video and told them in this video that if they did not comply by Christmas Day, they would be excommunicated. Now, 290 out of 328 churches did comply, but listen very carefully, they complied only for the Christmas Eve, Christmas Day services. That's about 88%, and this we're getting from the Archdiocesan Protection Council. We're getting these figures from them. So a clergy source, a high-ranking source from Ernakulam, Angamali Diocese, told me that they did this to out of deference, out of respect to Pope Francis. And some of them are interpreting this video message from Pope Francis as, oh, you're right, he wants us to do that, but only for a period, and let's make that period only Christmas Day. In fact, the laity, or rather a lay group called Almaya Munetum, said that all the churches, there are more than 400 priests and 600,000 laity. All of them but 5 have reverted back to the facing the people all through the service form, which Pope Francis is objecting to, and they are not going to comply with the Vatican's diktat.
So just for the sake of the audience who's not maybe up to speed of the story, on Christmas Day, they were all supposed to be facing the people just for the first half of the Mass, Liturgy of the Word, if you will, and then the second half facing back to the iconostases, to the tabernacle, liturgical east, for the second half of the liturgy, and they did that only for Christmas Day, and then they went back to facing the people throughout the whole liturgy after that. That's correct?
Absolutely, absolutely, and they will continue to do that.
Okay, so in there, they are in violation of the ultimatum, that the compromised form that said, let's face the people during half of it and face east during the second half. That was the compromise from Rome and came with an ultimatum, and that was spear-tipped with an excommunication threat. So are we expecting then, Jules, the Pope to be excommunicating these priests anytime soon?
Now, that's a very good question, and that is a major test of whether he will actually, or whether he's even capable of, at this stage of his papacy, of cracking down and standing by his, the sanctions that he has imposed. And it looks like he might not go ahead, because if he does, there will almost certainly be schism, and it's not a small matter. There are people who say this is going to be the biggest schism in the Catholic Church after Marcel Lefebvre and the SSPX moved out of Rome. So they're very carefully weighing the pros and the cons, and it looks like this might be yet another rebuff to Francis's authority.
So, Jules, how have the lay faithful been responding to Pope Francis' orders? Have they been siding with the Pope, obedient to the papacy, or are they siding with the dissenting priests?
Now, this is again very interesting. The laity are not at all happy with the Pope's compromise formula, with the Pope's ultimatum. They have decided to, dissent totally. In fact, my clergy source tells me that many churches were almost empty in the Inoculum Angamali Archeparchy. Parishioners, by and large, just boycotted the Christmas Day services because they knew the parish priest would be forced to adopt the compromise formula. In a couple of churches, there were even scuffles. So the St. Thomas Church in Chittoor, on the 24th of December, the police had to be called because there was a virtual riot in the church. In 2 more churches, the laity has threatened the priests with violence if they go ahead and adopt the compromise formula. In one church, the laity even locked the parish priest before he could celebrate, the liturgy adopting the compromise formula. So in a number of cases, the priests are living in, the few priests who do want to go along with the Vatican, they are living in fear of the laity, and so the laity is flexing its muscle. You can see what happened at St. Joseph's Church on the 27th of December, when the parish priest tried to celebrate Mass using the compromise formula. There was violence, and let's play that video for you.
Wow, that's over the top. Those guys are really zealous down there. They don't mind messing it up, and it's sacrilege, though. I mean, this is in a church right during Mass, correct?
Absolutely, Brad. And you can see the gentleman, if I can call him that, at the center of the violence, took a candlestick, a massive candlestick, and was swinging it around and threatening to, bash people with that. Now remember, we are not condoning what they are doing, but this resentment, in one sense, is historic, because I've said this repeatedly, that the Thomas tradition in India goes back to AD 52 with the arrival of St. Thomas there. And these churches were independent of Rome for centuries, until the Portuguese missionaries came and virtually destroyed their liturgy, burned their East Syriac liturgical books, and forced, the Romanism, if I can call it that, on them, Roman Catholicism, and forced some of them to come under the jurisdiction of the papacy. So that historic resentment, is still very strong. And they bring this up all the time, even though they may not be justified in bringing it up. They bring it up and say, well, look at how, they treated us once upon a time, and now we're not going to let them do it again to us.
Yeah, to back that up, there has been apologies over the years, and also the understanding from Rome that, the Eastern rites are not to be Romanized, are not to be gutted of their authentic Eastern heritage or liturgy that authentically, organically developed over the years. And it's sad that certain representatives in those areas, took it upon themselves to do such things. But let's go to, how has the Pope's representative to India, Archbishop Cyril Vasil, that we've been reporting on a few times here now, how's he handling this whole situation?
Right now, there are reports that the clergy have been triggered by him yet again, and the laity, of course, because he promised that he would listen to them. He came to a mutual agreement with the leaders of the dissenting group, and then he went back on his word. So that is one report I'm hearing. But his Christmas message, he did say very categorically again that obedience was being demanded of these clergy to preserve unity. It was, the Vatican was not trying to make a particular theological point or liturgical point, or score any marks over the Syro-Malabar Catholics, but basically they were trying to maintain unity. And which, of course, the dissenters, just laugh off, because they say we had unity all this while, and we just had unity in diversity. What the Vatican is forcing upon us is not unity, but uniformity. And Vasil also made reference to the Pope's video. He asks the priest, why do you think the Pope sent you this message in a video format? Because he personally wanted to address you and tell you this is what he thinks, directly. And he said, Pope Francis, there was no ambiguity in the video, and so you are expected to comply with it. Now, he's been meeting with the apostolic administrator of the Archieparchy, Father Bosco Putur, and trying to, work out what's happening. But he's also received information on all the priests and all the parishes who refused to comply with the compromise formula, and who did just on Christmas Day and now have reverted back. And, he's got this in his database and is taking it back to Rome with him, where this matter will be dealt with however Rome deems fit.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of difficult pastoral. I mean, if they sack so many priests at so many parishes, who's going to fill in there? Who's going to actually say the masses, while all this is working its way out? That's an interesting angle there as well. What are the experts saying about the tent situation? Are they expecting schism to be just around the corner?
Right just before Christmas, Father Pablo Gefael, who is an Eastern Orthodox canon lawyer teaching at the Holy Cross University in Rome, he said that he's also, by the way, a consultant to the dicastery for Eastern churches. He said that there is almost certainly going to be schism as a result of this dissent. And the hope is that if it is delayed enough, if they keep stalling on both sides, recognizing clearly that a stalemate has been reached, they have gone beyond the point of no return now. So to avoid putting Pope Francis to total shame, or to avoid sacking 400 priests, 600,000 ladies, schism, etc., all they might do is simply drag this on until this pontificate ends. And of course, with a new pope, things might just go back to the way it was, and everyone lives happily ever after, at least relatively speaking.
Now, Jules, in contrast to this failure to excommunicate the Indian priests, 400 or plus of them, and despite repeated threats by Pope Francis to do so, an Italian priest was excommunicated just 24 hours after making nefarious, statements about Pope Francis. Can you recap that for our viewers?
Now, this is a very big story in Italy. Even, the local village newspapers are carrying the story. It's about Father Ramon Guidetti, who was parish priest of a small village church in the Diocese of Livorno. And on New Year's Eve, December the 31st, during Mass, during his sermon, he talked about, he attacked Pope Francis. He called him a Jesuit Freemason who is linked to the globalist powers. He called him an anti-pope. He said that he was a usurper of the chair of St. Peter, and, all sorts of things during the sermon. Now, very interestingly, the congregation actually applauded during the sermon in church. And however, within less than 24 hours, Brad, the very next day, New Year's Day, Bishop Simone Giusti, who is the Bishop of Livorno, immediately excommunicated Father Guidetti and sent out a very strong message to any other priest in Italy who would dare to oppose the validity of the papacy of Pope Francis.
There's one more backstory sidebar here, Jules. You brought it up before, the TLM with Traditionis Custodes here. How do you see the link between handling the authority on the liturgy in India, and if they don't get everybody in lockstep down there, do you see somehow a bleed over into traditional priests and what they may be thinking they can do with independent churches, or just doing their liturgy the way they want to? Can you weigh in on that?
Absolutely, Brad, because as I've said before, my sources in India tell me that the only reason Pope Francis is taking this so seriously, they tell me this, Germany, priests are de facto in schism by blessing same-sex couples and doing all sorts of things, you can preach heresy every Sunday from the pulpit and nobody will do a thing. But the reason why they are cracking down on these priests, interestingly, by the way, just as an aside, one of these churches, Syro-Malabar churches in Kerala, even had an LGBTQIA plus a star for Christmas on the church, and people were scandalized. But of course, nothing happens to that priest because he has that star. However, my sources tell me that Pope Francis is terrified that if this liturgical dissent is not squashed, then that might, as you said, bleed over into the traditional Latin Mass circles, and they will say that, well, if you can't whip the Indian priest, the Sirumalabar priest, into line, how come you can tell us what to do with the way we celebrate the rite, particularly since we want to celebrate the Mass of the Ages, as they call it, the Tridentine rite. So this is a major worry for the Francis papacy, and that is yet another reason they feel they need to crack down and squash this whole thing before it spreads and turns into a kind of plague.
Well, it's quite a mess there globally. Seems like justice comes swiftly for some, while it seems to be delayed for others. Pray for all parties concerned that there will be unity in the church. A unity that starts with obedience to God and to all rightful authority that Christ exercises through his representatives in Holy Mother Church. Jules, thank you so much for getting us up to speed on this story, and update us as this tense situation moves forward.
I will certainly, Brad. Thank you.
Thanks again for watching today's episode of Rome Dispatch. This show is brought to you by donors like Real Estate for Life. If you're looking to buy or sell a home and want to support our mission, visit realestateforlife.org. Again, that's realestateforlife.org. Be sure to tell them Church Militant sent you. God bless.